Namaskar. Welcome to the session on the blog titled Non-Fictional Prose, which forms part of the course on Indian English Literature. In this video, I shall first tell you some of the basic features of non-fiction, and then we'll move on to share a brief account of non-fiction writing in English in India. Finally, we shall discuss Amitav Ghosh's essay Stories in Stone. In another video, which will follow this one, we shall focus on Ghosh's titular essay Dancing in Cambodia. Non-fiction is a genre all of you are familiar with. You read newspaper reports, you read essays, you read journal articles. So, all these are part of non-fiction. Non-fiction straddles several overlapping genres such as biography, autobiography, travel writing, public speeches, philosophical tracts and historical narratives. M.K. Nayak and Shamala Narayan, two prominent critics of Indian writing in English, have rightly compared it with a many-branched tree. So, a tree that has many branches. The Oxford English Dictionary defines non-fiction as prose writing that is informative or factual rather than fictional. Recently, scholars and critics have been using the label creative non-fiction to refer to the kind of writing which is based on facts and information, but employs many of the literary devices commonly found in fiction. Ghosh's essay, Amitav Ghosh's essays prescribed for you undoubtedly fall into this category of creative non-fiction. To find out more on creative non-fiction, please visit www.creativefiction.org. The most crucial difference between fiction and non-fiction consists in the latter's claim to truth. A work of fiction may be based on a true incident, but it can make no truth claims. Generally speaking, authors leave more room for invention and imagination in fictional narratives than in non-fiction. However, despite being often posited as two mutually oppositional categories, fiction and non-fiction share several defining features, which I shall discuss shortly. Authors of non-fiction often deploy structuring devices we generally associate with fiction, such as rearranging the chronological order of events in order to build suspense or creating multi-dimensional flesh and blood characters to embed incidents in a larger human context. The employment of such literary devices usually render the non-fictional text more dramatic. Let me establish now the context of non-fictional writings in English in India before I draw your attention to Amitav Ghosh's Stories in Stone, which is the prescribed text. Non-fictional writing in English in India can be traced to the beginning of Indian writing in English. Deen Muhammad's now famous The Travels of Deen Muhammad can be seen as the first non-fiction prose text written by an Indian in English. This book was published in 1794, but we had lost track of it and it was rediscovered due to contributions of Mr. Fisher, who brought out this book in the 1990s. So, for 200 years almost, we were oblivious of the existence of this book. Though Travels of Deen Muhammad is presented in the form of a series of letters to a fictive friend, it is primarily based on the author's lived experiences in the colonial army, and the book ends with the author's arrival in Britain. So, there are elements of fiction in this book. So it's since the person to whom these letters are being written is a fictional one, is a figment of the author's imagination, yet it contains so much facts and details, lived experiences, that it can safely be clubbed as a non-fictional text. Raja Rammohan Ray's A Defense of Hindu Theism, which was published in 1817, is among the earliest examples of expository prose writing in English by an Indian author. With the proliferation of newspapers, magazines and literary periodicals in the second half of the 19th century, non-fictional texts in the form of biographies, journalistic articles, book reviews and expository and polemical essays became more prevalent. In the late 19th century, you would come across in multiple Indian languages and also in English a lot of essays that led to controversies. So those essays I am referring to as polemical essays. However, this development of non-fictional texts in the rise of the non-fictional texts in the late 19th century is discernible more in modern Indian languages or bhashas than in English. A notable non-fiction writer of the period who wrote in English is Ramesh Chandra Datta, whose Economic History of India in 2 volumes, published in 1902 and 1904, exercised an immediate and profound influence on the contemporary reading public. Students, you must keep in mind that many writers like Bankim Chandra Chatterjee, who are better known for their contribution to the world of fiction, also engaged in writing non-fiction. And writers like Ramesh Chandra, known now for his contribution to non-fiction writing, also authored novels. So these are not mutually exclusive categories. Fiction writers writing non-fiction and non-fiction writers writing fiction. In fact, when I say fiction writers and non-fiction writers, I am also creating a sort of binary. That binary simply does not exist. So this pattern of writers who are known for their fiction writing non-fiction and writers who are celebrated for their non-fictional works writing novels, this pattern continues to unfold even today. And the 20th century has witnessed many major non-fiction writers who made a name making major contributions to various other forms of literature. Therefore, it should not surprise us when we notice in non-fictional texts key strategies and devices we come across in works of fiction. If in the Horatian formulation, the aim of literature is to instruct and delight, most successful writers of non-fiction take care not to lose sight of the latter duty of the writer, that is, to delight. In the first half of the 20th century, almost all nationalist leaders of India used non-fiction to interrogate and undermine the moral and political foundations of the British Empire. The empire started writing back. There are they are so numerous that I can't go on mentioning names here individually, and I don't have to mention their names because you already know many of them. So Tilak, Nehru, Gandhi, and so on and so forth. So for a more comprehensive discussion of non-fiction writing in India in English, I urge you to read the relevant chapters in M.K. Nayak's History of Indian English Literature, which Sahitya Academy published in 1982, remains a classic. Then M.K. Nayak's and Samala Narayan's sequel to the History of Indian English Literature, titled Indian English Literature 1980, till 2000, a critical survey. It was published in 2004, and A.K. Mehrotra's A Concise History of Indian Literature in English. Another book called titled Indian Philosophy in English, published in 2011 by OUP, and it's edited by Nalini Bhushan and J. Garfield. This book, Indian Philosophy in English, contains the works of many important non-fiction writers of the first half of the 20th century, such as Swami Vivekananda or Aurobindo or A.K. Kumaraswamy. So, all these writers are featured in this volume. Now, let us turn our attention to Amitav Ghosh, whose essays are prescribed for you here. So, Amitav Ghosh is one such writer who excelled in both fiction and non-fiction. Though he is more famous as a celebrated author of novels such as The Circle of Reason, The Shadow Lines, The Hungry Tide, his non-fictional texts, Dancing in Cambodia, At Large in Burma, The Imam and the Indian, and Incendiary Circumstances have received great critical acclaim. The essay Stories in Stone, first published in the Observer magazine in 1994, has as its setting the famous Angkor Wat temple complex in Cambodia. Now, there are many YouTube videos on the Angkor Wat temple, and I want you to explore some of these videos. I'll also mention one or two such videos and give the links on the slide. So, this huge multi-storied temples of Angkor Wat and the nearby capital of Angkor Thom represent a global cultural heritage, and there is an international campaign to reclaim these structures from the tropical jungle, which has engulfed them over centuries. Now, much of it has been reclaimed. To learn more about Angkor Wat and the work in progress to restore it, you may watch the National Geographic documentary available on YouTube, Angkor Wat full episode Access 360° World Heritage, which was produced in 2021. However, when Ghosh writes a piece on Angkor Wat, instead of retelling the history of the architectural marvel and the feeling of wonder it must have aroused in him during his visit to the site, instead of doing that, Ghosh chooses to highlight the importance of Angkor Wat in the lives of contemporary Cambodians. And he does so by seamlessly weaving the oral narratives of two persons closely associated with the temple complex in different capacities. Kong Sarit, a conservation worker, and the Venerable Luang Chun, a Buddhist monk. So, Kong Sarit and Luang Chun are the two persons whose oral accounts Ghosh records in this essay in his own imitable style. Ghosh, who himself holds a doctoral degree in social anthropology from Oxford University, departs from the conventions of usual academic writing by presenting them as recognizable individuals rather than faceless informants. See how Ghosh, through the fine detailing, helps the reader imagine these two characters. Now, these are instances from the text. I'll produce these quotations in the slides themselves. So, he, that is Kong Sarit, was a thin, slight man in his early 40s with a wispy, incongruously villainous looking moustache. He spoke fluent English in a rapid, gravelly voice that sometimes broke into a hacking laugh. His hands were never without a cigarette, and while he spoke, he seemed to paint the air with its glowing tip, conjuring up visions with calls of blue smoke. So, I mean, one may wonder at this point, how does it contribute to a non-fictional world? But let's look at another example before we discuss this point. Similarly, Ben Luong Chun, the other character, is presented as a tall, aquiline man whose saffron robes hung upon his skeletal limbs like sheets on a wire fence. Such intricate detailing and use of compelling images may not add value to a purely academic paper, but it certainly helps Ghosh's reader, that is you and I. So, it certainly helps us get transported to the world inhabited by these characters. While Ghosh's account deals with the importance of storytelling in keeping a culture alive, a master storyteller himself, Ghosh takes care to record the experiences of the two characters, particularly during the 3 years of the Pol Pot time in the story form. We shall discuss the Pol Pot time in greater detail in the video on the essay Dancing in Cambodia. Let me just tell you briefly what this Pol Pot period is for those of you who have not read the text, though I urge all of you to read the primary text. This period is among the most violent and brutal in human history, during which more than 1 million people were slaughtered. King Kong Sarit's vivid account of how he fabricated a story in order to escape imminent execution is particularly dramatic and absorbing. Ghosh also takes great care to suffuse lively accounts with hard facts. However, he would often give an ironic twist to events and incidents that have been for long held as blandly taken for granted facts. So, you see for yourself how he counters the idea that Angkor Wat was quote unquote discovered by the 19th century French naturalist Henri Moore. And I am quoting from the text. Thus, the most powerful of the myths that surround Angkor, the legend of its accidental discovery by the 19th century French explorer Henri Moore, is no more and no less true than any of the other inscribed upon the temple. For it is true that Angkor was already well known to the Buddhist Sangha and to the nobility of Cambodia and Thailand, not as a fetish perhaps, but in the quotidian way in which medieval monuments are usually absorbed into living history. It is also true that Moore and the French did indeed make a discovery. They discovered a mirror for themselves of the imperial state. I unquote, I finish the quotation and let's reflect on it for a little while. The discovery was therefore more for the people of Europe than those whose lives were intricately woven into it. In the process of restoring it scientifically, the Europeans separated the monument from the mundane uses to which its present day inhabitants put it. This aspect gets evocatively captured in the account of Reverend Luong Chun, and this contrast continues even into the present day. Tourists and archaeologists go to the restored monuments. The local people and pilgrims are more interested in visiting the Buddhist shrine in the great courtyard. So, being an anthropologist in training, I have already told you that Amitav Ghosh holds a doctoral degree from Oxford University in social anthropology. So, being a trained anthropologist, Ghosh also explores the paradoxical aspect of Angkor Wat as an ancient monument and a pervasive cultural symbol in contemporary Cambodia. And I quote again, Angkor Wat is undisputedly a temple, yet it never figures in anything to do with religion, or indeed in any context that might be called traditional or old-fashioned. Its likeness appears instead on certain factory-produced commodities like beer. It is stamped on uniforms, civil and military. It figures on the logos of large corporations like banks. Indeed, the erstwhile Kampuchea Airlines even succeeded in transforming this most earthbound of structures into a symbol of flight by lending it a pair of wings. This last image in the list, Angkor Wat with a pair of wings, is a vivid illustration of Amitav Ghosh's attention to the finest of nuances and his ability to imagine unexpected juxtapositions. To conclude, I would like to repeat that there is a strong overlap between narrative strategies and literary devices employed in works of fiction and non-fiction. I am sure many of you have read Amitav Ghosh's novels. If not, please do that. If you have read, you are already aware, or else if you once you read, you will immediately become aware of the rich factual details that drive his plots. Amitav Ghosh's success as a writer of both fiction and non-fiction rests heavily on his ability to seamlessly weave the two together. Not the world of fiction so much, but the strategies employed in fictional works and the world of non-fiction. So you can see him seamlessly weaving the two together. Now, why don't you pick up some of his novels like The Shadow Lines or the titles from the Ibis trilogy, River of Smoke, Flood of Fire, to see for yourself how factual details and information enter the world of fiction. Thank you for patiently listening to me.